Super Bowl. So let me get some bold predictions from this crew. And I want bold. Here we go. Bartholomew, give me something bold.
I got something bold for you. How about a defensive player wins the MVP of the Super Bowl? Listen, Mahomes, you've got every award. Let your big fella eat too. If they're going to hold Saquon Barkley and win this game, it's going to be because Chris Jones had a dominant performance. If they do that, give the man an accolade.
I like that, actually. That's a good one. Graz, try and live up to that.
I'll try. DeAndre Hopkins catches the game-winning touchdown. Remember DeAndre Hopkins? He's on the Chiefs. You may not have known that from watching this year's playoffs, but he was their big deadline acquisition. At some point, I think he makes a contribution. Last year it was Mecole Hardman. Could be anybody with the Chiefs. That's my prediction. DeAndre Hopkins reminds everybody who he plays for and has his Super Bowl moment.
I like that. Last year it was a player they acquired during the season. Maybe they do it again. Mike T, give me a bold prediction.
Saquon Barkley is held to under 100 yards. Building on what Bart said, maybe it's Chris Jones' domination, but how about this, Greeny? Steve Spagnuolo has gone 18 consecutive postseason games as the Chiefs defensive coordinator, holding the opposition's best running back under 100 yards. I expect that to continue.
That's as bold as it gets, and obviously an enormous factor in this game. Let's talk about Saquon for a moment. Yesterday on local Philadelphia radio, our Jason Kelsey, who knows that offense as well as it can be known, brought up how the Eagles' explosive addition on offense has impacted the conversations around the quarterback this year.
I think Jalen never gets enough credit for a lot of the things he does for this offense. And Saquon Barkley would not have the season he had without having Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. And that's a reality of it. And he never gets credit for that. And all of that goes to the offensive line and Saquon. Mm-hmm. The reality is, his threat as a runner, his threat as an RPO person, all of that stuff opens up so many other things.
So that's really interesting. And again, that's about as credible a person to be saying that as you possibly can get. So is this linebacker sitting here. Oh. Is that right? Is Jalen Hurts' ability to run a significant factor in the season that Saquon Barkley has had?
Yeah, I would say it's right up there with the offensive line, how massive they are, and the play design and Saquon's greatness. But, we see it in Baltimore as well with Lamar Jackson. When you have a quarterback that's a threat to keep them.
And so during the regular season, I agree with what Jason Kelsey said, but that has not been the trend in the playoffs.
Yeah, but remember, he's come in the playoffs coming back from the concussion, and then he had the knee. So we will see. Graziano, help me figure something out here.
I'll try.
I cannot decide if Jalen Hurts, because look at the question on the screen.
Yeah.
We don't usually ask that about a guy who has been the starting quarterback in the Super Bowl twice in a 3-year span. Mm-hmm. Is Jalen Hurts underappreciated? Is he overly criticized? I feel like there's a sentiment out there that he is, and I'm not sure I agree.
The problem is, in the times in which we live, there's a sentiment out there that says everything, right? Like you can find a conversation happening online that says Jalen Hurts stinks, and you can find a conversation happening online that says Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback of all time. It's a matter of what you want to pay attention to. I think what is accurate about Jalen Hurts this season is that, yes, he's still the quarterback that can elevate his team and he can have a game as a passer. I think you can say that Jalen Hurts did not perform with consistent accuracy and production throughout the year, week to week, without saying Jalen Hurts stinks or Jalen Hurts doesn't get enough credit. Yeah. I do think we know who he is and that he's a guy that can step up in big moments and can do anything you want to do. It's just, I think this year was not quite as consistently great as, say, 2022 was.
Greedy, here's the juxtaposition. There's a lot of people out there that say wins is not a quarterback statistic. All Jalen Hurts does is win. Super Bowl in 2 of the last 3 years. To Graz's point, though, here's where I think you're getting the criticism. During the season, they only average 187 yards per game passing the ball, which is 29th in the league. And when we're talking about the fire impact, it's hard to quantify. And I think that's why there's sort of like this dichotomy about Jalen Hurts. It just looks different than others, but it's still effective.
It's because we can't measure it, Greeny, right?
Right.
We can't measure really his impact because it's not a statistic that backs it up, because Saquon's statistic is his statistic, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But the reality is his impact. And we give Josh Allen a lot of credit for what he don't do. That's putting the ball at risk. Jalen Hurts had a season a couple years ago, last season, where he continuously turned over the ball.
Yeah.
Right. So now him managing the game, we actually hold it against him. And the reason we hold it against him is because he makes $255 million. When you make that type of money, people want to be entertained every night. They want to see you perform at an MVP caliber level, but they don't need that for them to be effective and be able to win.
The other thing is this Eagle, we talk about the Saquon Barkley and the offensive line, and like it all works together so well. It's such a great team in terms of how it's built and the number of different ways you can win. Like Patrick Mahomes will have a playoff stretch where he doesn't get to 200 yards passing. They win all the games. He gets benefit of the doubt because we've seen him hold up the Lombardi Trophy 3 times, right? We haven't seen that with Jalen yet. So, but I mean, you talk about, there's not stats to back it up. He would say, well, we've been in the Super Bowl the last 2 out of the last 3 years.
Right.
So that's a stat. I must be doing something right.
But he's the last person we give the credit. We're going to give it to Vic Fangio. We're going to give it to Kellen Moore. We're going to give it to Saquon Barkley. We're going to give it to the offensive line. Then we credit Jalen
I'll
Hurts.
venture to say that if they win this game, he's not going to care who gets the credit.
Right. No, absolutely.
And Greeny, if you go back to the roots of who he is, his dad was a high school coach.
Yeah.
He went to Alabama. He actually got benched. He was a second-round pick, not a first-round pick. So he's been a little bit of the underdog his whole career. But again, his selflessness to me is critical. And when you hear a former teammate like Jason Kelsey, talk about his impact to me, that's the underrated aspect of his game.
See, I guess the way I look at it is, and maybe the quarterback, he doesn't feel like as he's getting the glory, but
Right.
every team in the NFL would win the way the Eagles win if they could.
If they could, yeah.
There's nothing you can do more effective. The NFL in this day and age is about explosive plays on offense. That's the line you should underline. Not how many yards did you throw for. It's how many explosive plays does a team have. If you can get explosive plays in the running game, that's better than getting them in the passing game because there's almost no risk attached to it.
Yeah.
So, they're doing what they're doing because they can, and everyone would do it if they could.
Yeah.
And so people look at it and they say, well, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith. Why isn't he throwing for 350 yards a game?
Doesn't have to.
The simple answer is that he doesn't have to, and it's better not to. We'll have more on this as we go, because I think it's kind of an interesting one, but nothing more interesting than my buddy Fortenbaugh, who was kicking my behind in this competition that we had. In fact, I'm not even sure.
Still early, Green.
Greeny versus Joe is no longer a rivalry. It's just a relationship. But one way or another, we will have our final installment of that coming up. But let's start with best bets. What are you looking at with the Eagles for Super Sunday?
Jalen Hurts doesn't get